began like when these girls were little bitty, watching them, watching their family, watching how interactions took place between the husband and the wife. And was this daughter, was that little girl's father really teaching her the word, or was she learning how to be a good wife, a good mom? Was she learning the moral character, the strong integrity that it took to be a woman that could take place in his family and could take her part there and help that family fulfill the heritage that it had been given? These fathers, their children were literally the blessing of God. Like to us, we might think it's financial, house, of course children are a blessing to us too, but there's many other things that encompass that. But to the Hebrew family, their children were their future, literally. They were their blessings. Children were seen as a blessing straight from the hand of God. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They were it. If a man had many sons, he was considered very wealthy. There was also the spiritual asset that this girl was to the family, because she was going to be an influencer on this man's son's life, and the father knew it. And so he was very particular about who he chose for his son to marry. And yes, the father is the one that initiated the wedding, the father of the son. Very much like God the Father is the one that initiated our wedding to Christ. There was a price paid for the bride. It was called a mohar, M-O-H-A-R, if y'all want to write it down. And it is the bride price. The price paid for the bride was the price that the father of the groom was paying for the bride was seen as reflective of that bride's worth. So if that father believed that he was getting an amazing woman of God and she was full of integrity, if you can remember the story of Rebecca, when the servant came to get Rebecca, remember all the wealth that he brought to her family, and he gave riches to her and to her family, and there was great wealth involved because he knew he was getting a real woman of value. Our bride price is Christ. God gave Christ as our bride price. That is what he thought we were. I always thought that our greatest hindrance to truly experiencing God, and maybe in which I believe that the church's greatest, fault you could say, is that she doesn't know how to truly experience God. Because if she did, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. And so I always questioned God about that. And I always believed it was because we thought too much of ourselves. And we prize ourselves too much. We're selfish. And we are. But what God's showing me is a deeper truth. That in reality, it's not that we prize ourselves too much. It's that we don't know what we're worth. And it takes knowing Jesus to know what you're worth, because he is our worth. I hope that makes sense. We sell ourselves so easily to the things of this world. We sell ourselves to television, to approval, man's approval. We sell ourselves to relationships, to friendships, to clothes. We sell ourselves to the cheap things of this world. And God says, you do that because you have no idea how infinitely valuable you are. You have no idea. You haven't even begun to know. When you search the depths of my heart and you search the depths of who my son is and what he did for you, you will understand you are of infinite value. It takes knowing God to know who you are. And the more we find him and we uncover him in ourselves, the more we are able to find ourselves. And when we find ourselves, we don't find something small and insignificant. We find something eternal, of great value, a pearl of great price. He sold everything for you. He sold everything for you. I thought it was so touching that the Father gave the one thing he could give that would cost him, that would sacrifice. Because if you think about it, these other grooms, these other fathers of the grooms, they would give money, they would give wealth, they would give land, they would give things that they had, that they could afford to give. And that was to show their importance, and also to show the importance of the woman that they were bringing into their family. But God couldn't given those things for us? He's God. What can he give us literally that is something that would show sacrifice on his part? There's only one thing, and that is what he gave, which is Jesus Christ, his son. It's the only thing he could have given that would have been hard for him to give. And he knew it would be hard for us to give ourselves to him. And so he gave himself something that was hard for him to give to us first, showing that there's sacrifice involved here. And just like there's sacrifice for me to give you my son, there's going to be sacrifice for us to give him our hearts. It's a true love story. It's a true love story. True love involves sacrifice. In John 3:16, which we've all heard, but it kind of takes on new depth when you hear it in light of what we're learning. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes in him should never perish but have everlasting life." The love story of us and Jesus is alluded to all through the Bible. And because this is the beginning of the story for us in this series, we're going to go back to the beginning. In the garden with Adam and Eve. And the word for man in Genesis 2:23, where it says, "And the man said, This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, capital W, because she is taken out of man, capital M." And that is the first time those words are used right there for Adam, because God called him Adam. When he created him, God named him as Adam. When someone names something, they're given authority and dominion over it. So God named Adam because he had authority and dominion over him. But then Adam went forth and named everything else, all the animals, and then even as we see later on after the fall, his wife, Eve. The word for woman is the word Isha. It is taken from the word Aish, which is man. It's a very basic root word for man. And Adam calls himself this in the very beginning. In Genesis 1, God's name for man was Adam, which means ruddy and red. It means the dirt. There was red soil he was created from. And God made him out of the dirt and then breathed his own breath into him, and he became a living being. So man was made from dirt, from land, for the land, because his dominion was involving the earth and providing and being the one that answers directly to God. Because woman was made out of man, her ID and name were given literally means taken out of man. In fact, the word Isha doesn't exist unless the word Aish. Do you see what I'm saying? That word is a derivative of that. Just as woman would not have existed unless she came out of man. Does that make sense? Isha does not have meaning without the word Ish. Ish denotes that she is from him. And yet in her name, there's a little different. It has the AH in there. And do y'all know, if y'all have studied the Bible at all, you know that is the breath. It's the Spirit of God. It's just like, remember when God told Abraham's name at the very beginning was Abram. And then when you remember when God gave him the Abraham, it was when the promise was coming to fruition in Abraham's life. And Sarah's name in the beginning was Sarai. Sorry. It wasn't that kind of sorry. It was S-A-R-I. Sari. I guess it was Sari. And then whenever the promise of God was coming into her life, he told Abraham to call her Sarah, because the breath, the Spirit was coming in her. And therefore it changed her whole identity. Does that make sense? So the woman, that breath is put in the name of the woman. Okay? That's going to make sense to us later on when we keep going. Genesis 2:21-22. The man gave names to all the livestock and the birds of the heavens and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not a helper fit for him. So the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man. And while he slept, he took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into woman, and he brought her to man. When Adam woke up after that happened, he was probably like, ugh, my side hurts.